Today, what we will be doing is it's very practical based, and we'll be doing a lot of interviewing around it. So today, what we are going to do is competency based interview and behavioral event interview, which is very critical and very useful for all of you, because at any point of time, I'm sure, even if you want to do recruitment, interviewing, talent acquisition or promotion, etc., you can always use this technique or a tool called competency based interviewing and behavioral event interviewing. Okay, now having said that, let me just kind of, today being your last session, doesn't mean that you can't approach me. You can always approach me. You can text me for whatever clarification input required. It will be a pleasure to share that. Apart from that, so just to give you a little recap and a summary of what we did in the 3 sessions, very interactive sessions. We started with the because we were all talking about competencies, that it's an underlying characteristic. We defined competency, how critical it is, and what it is made up of. You could also give it acronym kind of knowledge, skill, and other attributes like social image, self-image, motives, traits, etc. We talked in depth about them, and then we talked about what, how when we do the entire competency architecture, how we look at the entire organization, and we look at the core competencies which emanate from the values, the vision, or the philosophy of the organization, cutting across all levels of the core competency has to be there. Like simple, like a value like integrity or a trust, or say for example an organization like Google has creativity, that becomes its core competency. And typically the core competency also helps you to differentiate or create that kind of USP, edge, an organization in today's especially in the competing times, they actually like to differentiate with their competitors or the peers in terms of such core competencies. Now, having said that, then we talked about functional competencies. Every function will have their own competencies end to end. And then we talked about role competencies. So when we talked about role competencies, every role has certain competencies. And how do you map them? You can do mapping by doing what we call as a role element analysis, which gives you an understanding of the knowledge, skill, or the technical competencies at a threshold level and at a differentiating level. Then we talked about the behavioral competencies in order to do this, in order to perform the job. Then we said for behavioral competencies, how do we go about, anybody just wanting to understand how do we go about if we have to actually map behavioral competencies? A quick one.
And the bars.
Pardon? Yeah. So we have to analyze and look at what. So from the job element and analysis, from those, we can actually look at, hey, what are those indicators? For classic example, for example, if a sales guy has to generate revenue and he has a target. Now, in order to perform, what are those key competencies which are required to perform or to achieve his targets? So we then looked at behavioral competencies. Now, today what we will be doing is saying, hey, how do we go about the competency-based interviewing?
Madam, one thing, just it's my thought process, whether I am correct or not, please let me know.
Yeah.
Because when we are mapping the behavioral part, what are the behaviors required for a particular job or for particular job, for the sales job maybe, or for the HR. Now, after earmarking or identification of the behavior, at the same time, the deliverables of the KRA KPIs and its relevance on the and the relevant behavioral pattern, bars can be derived from that?
For example?
For example, suppose the sales team maybe, or maybe an HR managers one of the KPI to control the attrition. Now,
Okay.
for control the attrition or managing the talents, now the relevant behavioral the skill sets, if we can derive, then it will be easier for the bars, or competency-based interviewing can be easier, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'll just tell you. Anybody who wants from the team who wants to respond before I respond for this particular thing? Say, for example, for an HR, it could be a recruiter or it could be an HRBP saying that if one of the deliverables is to reduce attrition, right? Anybody who wants to respond to this? I won't.
Ma'am, I couldn't get the question completely. So if the target of an HR person is to reduce attrition, so what should be the behavioral indicator? Is that the question?
Yeah, he's saying, how can I translate if I have to map behavioral indicators, and I have to also, analyze his behavior for that? How would you go about? So typically, if you understand, so just to respond to Majumdar, so if there is an HR person who is responsible or accountable for one of the responsibilities to reduce attrition. So the first thing what should come to your mind, so to reduce attrition, what are the things I will need to do? There are a set of tasks.
Yes.
There are set of tasks I need to do. So anybody who can tell me to reduce attrition, one task, what you will do?
Employee engagement.
Okay. So employee engagement is a very broad word. I can't observe. Can you observe? So what is that you do in employee engagement? My question is clear?
So, ma'am, Monisha here, probably I will check that the person is clear about his job role or not. Whether the person knows that initial 30 days, then 60 days, then 90 days, what the person is supposed to do and deliver. So that clarity first I will check the engagement.
So here it is, I'll tell you. When I'm talking about a behavioral competence, so you said employee engagement, okay? So when I talk about behavior, it has to be observable and it has to be measured. So therefore, when I talk about employee engagement, what does it mean? That as an HR business partner, I will look at what kind of initiatives am I doing? How am I going about? So I will coordinate with how am I going about doing that employee engagement? So what is the action or what is the observable behavior? It will be initiativeness, right? How am I going ahead? Am I then collaborating with my business people? Understanding the gaps. There are various list of things you would be doing, that means which can be observed and which can be measured. So therefore my question is, can you observe and measure then initiative?
Yes, we can observe and measure initiatives.
Absolutely, you can observe and measure initiative. So when you observe and measure initiative, so a bar can be written for initiative saying that how typically on a rating scale from 1 to 5, 1 could be the least behavior, 5 could be the excellent behavior. And I can say, hey, what behavior am I observing? So I can actually then circle, it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, it can be 4, it can be 5. Right?
Yes.
So I've created a rating scale where 1 is the least behavior and 5 is the excellent, outstanding behavior. And in between are the ranges 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I will say, hey, this initiative, where does it fit in? Yes, Prachi.
So, ma'am,
yeah.
even I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So that means when we define a competency, we also give a descriptor, okay, to what does this competency actually mean? For example, the initiative one, which you said, okay. takes initiative. Supposing it's one of the bars, a behavioral descriptor, one of the competencies.
It is not a bar.
It's a competency. Okay.
It is an indicator, initiative. Behavioral indicator.
It's
now
a behavior.
This behavioral indicator, you have to put it in a proficiency level, means initiative. Now, how will you put that person's initiative? Will you put a 1, 2, 3, 4, unless and until you rate that behavior? Got it?
So ma'am, for behavioral competencies, can initiative be one of the behavioral competency for any role?
Yes, it can be.
And then,
now, you told me one thing before that. Absolutely. Now, when I have to be very clear about competencies, behavioral competencies. Now, for a recruiter, if I say initiative, so it has to be in the light of the role, context.
Right. So that's why it's very important to define what that initiative word means in the context of the role. So that's why their competency descriptors also given for every competency.
So, absolutely. So before even you also do that, you have to also write the purpose of that role, the role in that context, because all your behavioral competencies are then aligned with that role. Because initiative for an R&D person might be a different behavior. Initiative for a recruiter could be a different behavior. No?
Yes.
I mean, we are all on the same page, or I mean, is there any still any doubt?
No, ma'am, I have understood it. So supposing I'm putting a behavioral indicator, supposing I'm defining a competency for a particular role and initiative is one of my behavioral competencies,
right.
Then I define what initiative is in the light of that role. And then when we give indicators, or when we put a rating scale, a bars, we can define for this role, what should be the rating scale, or what am I looking at on a scale of 1 to 5? How much should be the initiative that I require for this role? It can be a 2 or a 3 or a 4. And then later on, when I map it with the particular individual in the organization, I can identify the gap.
Yeah. So for example, you are absolutely on the same page. For example, if I say for a recruiter initiative, so typically initiative for a campus recruiter, what does it mean? That, this person has to take the initiative of getting in touch with the campuses, right? Collaboration, then, the placement desk. So you have to also look at, as you rightly stated, in the context. So what are those things? So when you're writing your rating scales 1 to 5, you can write in the light of that role. So 1 will be this, which is the least, lesser proficiency, and 5 will be the maximum. Or I can also have, just to be put it very simply, 1 to 3, where 1 will be least, 3 will be max, and 2 will be average. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh? Okay. Yeah, I think more or less everybody has got it right, and so this, in fact,
ma'am,
I have a question.
I have a question.
Who is this?
Prachi, ma'am, and
yeah. Tell me.
Arjit, go ahead.
Prachi,
if you want to go first. Go first. No problem.
Okay, please go.
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I have a question. Like for many organizations these days.
But can we have your audio at least for some time, Arjit? Or is it a challenge? A video?
Yes, ma'am. Presently means I am on the move. Means
No problem.
I am not at home.
No
so
problem.
I'll join as soon as I'm back.
Tell me.
Ma'am, the thing is, presently all corporations, they analyze a person's performance in terms of metrics, quantitatively. Now, for professions like HR, or wherein the qualitative input is directly not measurable or quantifiable, there is a challenge, because I want to place a specific situation wherein as recruiters, there are, say for campus recruitment, a sizable intake has to be taken care of, offer letters are issued. Out of them, a few turn out to be accept errors. or maybe the offer letters are issued, the people don't turn up and join the organization. This has an impact on the recruiter's performance profile. Now, these being qualitative competencies or qualitative subjective judgment, how can we have it interpreted, or how can we take care of these things through bars? Is it possible actually?
Your question is saying that if, for example, there is a recruiter, okay, role.
Right.
Recruiter executive role, okay. Now, or say for example, campus or whatever. So typically, if I were to do a job element analysis, it will be sourcing, selection, etc.
Right.
Some of those, and then to do them, certain key behavioral competencies, I would list them. Now,
Right.
you want to know whether these competencies are good to be evaluated with reference to the performance of that person.
Exactly.
You're talking about it?
Right. Right.
Like, for example, offer to join ratio.
Right.
Because one of the KPIs
exactly, ma'am. Exactly.
is, if I have 500 offers going and only 10% of them are joining, that means it's really, really very, very poor.
Bad. Or maybe why these 10% are not joining, if we mean.
Absolutely. And Arjit, for your information, there is absolutely a correlation. What did I say? What did I say? Correlation. What does it mean? That if you look at, if you very, very carefully do the competency mapping for the role, there is a correlation between the competencies and your performance. Because there is high validity also for this and predictability. For example, I will take your own data. For example, offer to join ratio is very, very poor, right?
Right.
What does it showcase? Go to the, so you our famous, what is that called? The funnel approach. I'm sure if you're a recruiter, you have this funnel approach where it's starting from the funnel approach of what the first level will be, or all the what channel partners everywhere where you source resumes, right?
Right, ma'am.
Then you do the screening, then you do the selection, then you do the interviewing. Okay. Let me tell you, based on the data, many a times, maybe even that advertising or releasing the ad for a job description did not actually match. When you get your first level of reduced number, you have not, either you have got many resumes, but when you screen them, it was very poor show. Okay, let me tell you. Then again, when you're talking about offer to join ratio, what comes, he's all, you have offered him, that means you found him fit, but have you really checked much more than what is the intent, what was the motive? So typically when we are doing another program called recruitment analyst program, or this competency-based interview program, more than anything, what's very, very important is to check the dissonance factors. What are dissonance factors? Maybe I'm very good, I fit the profile of this recruiter, but I'm a person who's not adaptable at all. I don't like to travel. I just hate to travel. So therefore, when I got to know that there's a lot of traveling, I don't want to do the job. So I don't want to. Okay. 2, maybe it's a night shift. That's a dissonance factor. So therefore, maybe salary was not discussed right at the beginning, and so this salary is not attractive enough, so therefore I don't want to join. So there are so many motivators. It is not, it could be money, it could be a lot of things. That's what you will do when you do this career anchors drivers. Are you with me, Arjun?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So therefore, I'm not saying you can totally increase it, but you can reduce it, right? I know that today many candidates do what? Shopping, right?
Right.
So they get the appointment orders and then they will choose, and they will choose not to join the one which is paying the least salary, or depending whatever their choice is.
Right.
But you can reduce that ratio by ensuring that you put filters in the previous levels.
Right, ma'am.
You got what I'm trying to say?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So that
Means we
you
have to be
don't-
more specific, and we need to have means record of past
you have to
experience
check
and
out at
validate.
every level in that funnel, because I know for sure, having seen, this is a common thing which happens, and I know for sure recruiters are in a hurry to close the numbers.
Right.
Because they have to close 20 numbers within 60 days. They are more concerned with issuing offers and quickly saying, hey, we have closed so many. Rather than, hey, what is his interest? What is the probability or what is the predictability? If I've issued the offer, is he going to join? But these bad practices like keeping the certificates and ensuring that, today I know there's another practice. What they do, they give you an indication email saying that you are offered an appointment, okay? But they don't issue an appointment letter. I mean,
right.
Because these numbers are going up, organizations have started doing what? They give you an email indicating, and only when on joining, they will give you a formal appointment order.
Yes.
Okay. But still, I, as a behavioralist, I will consider that how much can you bind him by keeping off his certificates or telling him that you have a 1 year, you have to do a bond of 2 years or 1 year. That is not going to work. You have to have different things. So, but responding again, coming back to your question, you can reduce this by actually, because when you do your competency mapping, definitely it has a high correlation with the performance. Otherwise, ultimately, why should you do competency if it is not having correlation with the performance? Exactly. It predicts performance, right?
Right.
So that's the difference between a top performer and a low performer. The need for achievement, need for affiliation, so depending on all that, what does it
Ma'am, one more thing, and also competencies when we define are always keeping in mind superior performance, right?
Yeah. The very fact that when you talk about competencies, and which has been researched a lot by McClelland, and I'm sure all of you read about McClelland, he was the one who coined this competency. We are saying that they give you what? Superior performance. The absence will not give you, the presence of it will give you superior performance, and the absence of a competency in the role context which is required will not lead to superior performance. And therefore, it is very, very critical, important to map competencies for every role, and they are contextual. Okay, can we go ahead, guys?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. On my part, it's fine.
Yeah, Prachi, let me just attend to your question because Arijit. Prachi, you're there?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes.
So my question is more or less similar to what we have been discussing right now. So how do I see it practically that, there is one organization-wide performance matrix, which is like standardized with each level, like say, for example, a 9 matrix or a 4-point matrix, which defines that, what probably an average good or excellent or bad performer would look like,
9 blocker.
9 blocker, right? Yeah, I'm sure you would know about it. So which actually says, 80% and above or below, or, things like that.
Absolutely.
Or, right. So that is one part. And that similar to that, every organization might have different raters to it, different performance raters and blockers, right? Whereas separately as an exercise, we do role-based competency mapping to specific functions, and then of course the however we have discussed so far. Now that is first you have to, so how does individually people are mapped, that, have they met their KPIs to what extent, and the moment that is defined and that is clear basis the competency, the role-based competency, they are put into the final 9 block matrix or probably a similar performance matrix, and that's how the mapping actually happens and the correlation happens. It's not like by default you'll be put in there. Absolutely. Right? That's how the correlation is, right? I'm just confirming my understanding.
Yeah, and also in today's times, organizations, the L&D is becoming a very, very strategic function, and therefore they are using the competency mapping is mostly done because they want to identify gaps and not do training by chance or by just putting up a calendar. They want to understand what are the levels at which my workforce is, whether it is at a functional level or at a role level. So when they do the training need analysis or identification of training needs, it's more, they're going more by the competency based, because that becomes then very, very specific what the organization requires, as opposed to, okay, fine, what I need, what kind of a training I want, and then just go for that, because training is very expensive. And definitely training, why is it strategic? Because taking into consideration the growth, the future of the organization, what does it want, what are the kind of core competencies it wants to build, it actually flows from there, right? And then it cascades down. Okay, all right, guys. So today what we are going to do is all about the competency based interviewing. So why everybody is talking about my question to you is, why competency based interview? Why not we continue with the traditional interview? Anybody?
Because we want to
I
recruit.
feel,
Yeah, Monisha, go ahead. Yeah.
okay, thanks. So, ma'am, I think as per my perspective, there are two reasons. One is person, when we go with the traditional way, it's not aligned with the role or the requirement of the job fitment. That's one. And second, your past experience tells about the, it may not, but future success. In the traditional interview, we may not able to dig deeper in their past incidents. Hence, people are looking more competency-based interview than a traditional one.
Okay, great. So therefore, all of you agree at least that it's very, very important to first of all be very, very clear as to, hey, what do I want? What is the selection criteria? What is that I really want first, right? And it's only then that then I can actually make out that what does the person have. So in a traditional interview, it was more by a subjective manner, going into hypothetical situations, not very, very clear about what the role really needed. So it was all about, the first impression. So it was very, very subjective. But today, when we are talking about the competency-based interview, the entire process is very objective, very scientific, because the selection criteria, the process, the way we go about is very scientific. So we actually define the criteria, define the kind of competencies required, technical, behavioral competencies which are required at what proficiency level for this role, and then we start interviewing the person based on that criteria. So having said that it's very objective, very what I would say scientific. So the focus would be on what? When we are interviewing a candidate, when we are talking about it, the focus would be more on what?
I think it would be more on the potential of the person, that what he can.
Potential of the person. Okay. Anybody else?
Ma'am, I also think that the focus would be on seeing how his competencies or his work is aligned with the competencies that we require as an organization, and see how much as possible if we can match the two and accordingly select the candidate.
Okay. So do you think this can happen abruptly the way it happens in organizations, saying that the recruiter will take some of the CVs to the business hiring manager? The hiring manager does not even have time to look at it, and they'll say, okay, fine, I have 10 minutes, I'm going to interview. Can that happen that way?
No, it cannot happen like that.
I don't know how many have experience I've actually seen in most of the organizations where I've worked or where I've worked as a consultant or a practitioner. Most of the time, what we take recruitment as the hiring managers, he thinks that he's a guru, and all that he thinks about is, okay, if the person is technically sound, and that's good enough. But after 3 months, when he has hired the best technical guy, he sees that the guy is either not performing very well, or he wants to leave. A lot of such things happen. Have you experienced, guys, such things? Huh? Most of the time. So it is because we have not given time. So does it need preparation? Or does it, just the way the practice is, okay, fine, I'll look at it, I have 10 minutes time and I can. So when you're going to do a competency-based interview, what are some of the things you need to prepare for? Let me just go, before we actually jump into the exercise, let me start noting down what are some of the things we need to prepare for. Let me just jot down. Okay, let's start. Preparation for a competency-based interview. What are the things which I need to have?
The job description of the person.
Excellent.
What is the job that we are looking at? And if we have a competency mapping exercise already done in the organization, we can look at what are the competencies that are required for this role.
Absolutely. Competencies required. Yeah. Then what
and
else?
We can also put a bar rating scale on the competencies that we have.
Absolutely. Why bars are required? Because when you are going to interview, you will know at what level you want to observe. Okay, fine. If he has actually demonstrated certain behavior through a situation, then you will be able to circle down at what level of proficiency has he demonstrated that behavior, right? Okay. Correct. What else?
And also, since when recruitment happens, it's not only just for one candidate.
Covered under this competencies required, right? Sorry, Vanessa.
Sorry.
Yeah. Huh.
I was saying, since multiple candidates are interviewed for the same role, bars and whatever other rating scales are there, they will be more effective. Then you can accordingly compare between candidates and see which is the best one.
You are almost there. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Ma'am, we may need to give, set of questions.
Renuka, can I just take you on after this important standardize the format? Yes. Where the traditional interviewing and the competency-based interviewing differ is, Renuka has come for a recruiter's job. I will ask a set of 5 questions and 6 questions. Okay. Then Vanessa comes, I'm going to ask another 5 or 6 questions. Exactly. Gopa comes, I'm going to ask another set of different questions. Right? Now, how the hell am I going to actually then rate them, weigh them, and say, hey, this is the best person. I like Gopa because she's smart. She looks really good. She comes from my same college. So I will maybe select her like that. Right? Or Vanessa, she spoke so nicely. Oh, well, such good spoken English. I was so carried away by that. So maybe. So there is no standard evaluation criteria which I follow to evaluate all the 3 candidates, right? So in a competency base, so I have to create that. Standardized. Then when I'm talking about competencies required, also all the competencies may not have the same weightage. You will agree? Maybe if I've listed out 3 competencies or 4 competencies, they may not have the same weightage. 1 or 2 competencies may be of high priority and the other may be of not priority. So I also need to do what? Prioritize, or I will put weightage. Right? Now, when I do weightage, what happens? I can create a matrix where competencies, weightage, okay, then I have given ranking. Then I can also do the total weightage so that when I'm actually coming to the conclusion of whom to select or whom to reject, I can see what is the total score, right? So I'm using a proper scientific objective score. Yeah.
Ma'am, I have a
I'm
question
so sorry,
here.
someone else, Renuka wanted to come in, I think. Yeah, Renuka, now tell me.
And I have a question, ma'am, after that.
Okay. Ma'am, I was also coming to the same point that we may have to give a standard questionnaire to the, functional managers to follow, depending for each competency, maybe, set of questions through which they can assess the competency. I was coming to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in your, I will write here, what is that pre-work? So you need to create the formats for interviewing formats for competencies, weightages, what is that you need to, and set of questions, sit with them, discuss with them, and do the, this will standardizing the format so that they are able to ask similar and same questions to everybody, right? Anything else which comes to your mind, guys?
Ma'am, I have a question. When we said that for whatever competence is required, we have to have a weightage. Yeah. Now, supposing if I'm recruiting an HR recruiter, so all the 4 competencies or 3 competencies, usually competencies will have more or less equal weightage, right? Or is it that one will be more important than the other? For example, in a learning and development.
I will give you an example, which is not HR, so that you can relate it with HR. I'm recruiting a sales guy. Okay. I'm getting a sales guy. What is his primary role? What is his primary role? Why does the role exist?
Primary role is to do sales and generate revenue for the company.
Primary role is sales, right?
Yeah.
So that means I will go sell a product, get an invoice, and that's it. So, okay. Now, you may say, customer care could also be one of his other competencies, but that may not be my primary thing. Mine is to sell it, and that's it. Okay. Or, in terms of what is it? Because typically customer care, what do they do after you have sold the product? If there are any problems, anything, so they take care of it. But maybe to a certain extent, he is responsible. So why I gave you this example, I need to understand recruiter. What is the primary role of the recruiter? So in order to execute or perform that role, what is that key competency which is required? Will that not have the highest? Okay, simple. To give you more light, recruiter and HR BP role, HR business partner. Will you find that engagement is a very, very key competency, right? For HR business partner. Engagement is also there for a recruiter. But would you put it as a key requirement there?
No, ma'am.
He has to coordinate with stakeholders, that's there. But in HR business partner, that is her key competency. Are you able to now say that, Renuka, that they'll definitely, I think it was Renuka or Monisha who asked me this question, that, all the 3 competences may be of the equal weightage.
Ma'am, it was me. I get the point.
Huh? So
Minal, yeah.
Yeah, Minal. So based on, so I need to reflect back, what is the purpose of this role, primary role, right? Compensation and benefit executive. I may not have so much of engagement as it will be what? I for detailing will be a very key thing for me, no? If I miss out on somebody's element and allowances and all, I'll have hell of problems thereafter. No? Eye for detail, that's also a trait. Does this person have eye for detail? No? Okay, guys, very clear? So weightage, will you all agree that weightage is also important because all competencies may not. So how will you do that? So when you're doing competency mapping, you will actually do all this. Which are those key competencies, at what level it is required, etc. Okay. All right. So let us jump into this exercise. Oh my God. Yeah. I think Vilma, you have that job description? Okay, let me just go otherwise. 1 second.
You want to show?
1 second. Just 1 minute, guys. BEI Concom. Yeah. The other one, I think. 1 second. Just a minute. Okay. Vilma has actually sent you all job description. Do you have all of you have that?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh?
Ma'am, HR head and L&D head descriptions we have.
Yep. Okay. Somebody can share that HR head and L&D head. Sorry. I'm going to close that. Can somebody share that? I think. Okay, somebody is already sharing it.
I have shared it.
But I'm not able to see. Why am I not able to see? Let me see. View. No. Okay. Why am I not able to see that? Yeah. Who is sharing this? I'm not able to see that.
I have. Hello.
Can you? Is that Gopa who is sharing?
I have shared it.
Okay. Can you actually, I mean, stop sharing and then show it once again, if you don't mind? There's some problem with my. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody sharing it now?
Vilma, are you or shall I share it?
Yeah. Somebody. Gopa, are you? Anybody? Great. Okay. So head of HR operations, why? Because most of you are very, very familiar, and couple of people are also into that role. Okay. So this is the brief on, yeah. Can you just scroll down? These are the responsibilities. All right. Okay. Just scroll down further. These are the requirements. Okay. Yep. Okay. Now, how many of us are there, participants?
12.
What we will do is I want 4 of you, four of you to form a panel. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I want 4 volunteers who will be a panel for the interviewing the head of HR operations. I want Gopa Ghosh to be the candidate. Okay. And yes, any volunteers?
Ma'am, I can interview.
Yes, ma'am.
Monish, I'll just write down. So Monisha, panel interviewer, then Minal. Okay. Minal, then Vanessa. All right. So Monisha, Minal, Vanessa. Okay. I'll have one gentleman also. Arijit. Okay. 4 people. And so 5 is Gopa, and the rest of you will be observers. Now, since all of you have this job description, what I want you to list down is 2 technical competencies, okay, because you are very familiar with an HR role, and then not more than 3 critical behavioral competencies, 3 or 4. All right, write them down. And then when it comes to behavioral competencies, I want you to just create 1, 2, 3 rating. That's it. 1 being the least, 2 being average, 3 being the outstanding. So that you can observe or measure those 3 behavioral competencies. I will repeat. All of you do this. One is list down the technical competencies, 2 or 3, and list down 3 behavioral competencies. Okay. And for technical competencies, please create threshold and differentiating. That is for technical, when I said knowledge and skills. And for behavioral competencies, create a rating scale of just 1, 2, 3, 1 being the least and 3 being the outstanding and 2 being average. Okay. Your interviewing time for we will give for the interview only 10 minutes should be good enough. Absolutely good enough. So I will give all of you say 6 minutes to 7 minutes for your preparation. For even Gopa, just to prepare herself, then for the interviewers to prepare their list of questions. The first round of this interview will be without any description, without any instructions, so that the observers will write down. The rest will be observers. And we have the list of participants. So besides Minal, Venice, Arjit, and Manisha and Gopa, the others will be observers who will write down what is that they asked and why did they ask. So each one of you, the observers, maybe 2 or 3, one can observe one interviewer, so that you are focused on writing all the questions. Say, for example, I'm an observer. I can just, you don't have to observe everybody, only when you saw. One can take up Arijit, one can take up Minal. So when you are saying you are observing Minal, I want you all to tell me what question she asked, and then why do you think she must have asked? How did that person responded? Because when we do later on the processing of this, then we'll find out. But very important to write down, if Minal is asking a question, to write down and how did the candidate respond. Okay. All right, guys. So I will give you 5 to 7 minutes of preparatory time. Please do your own preparation. Then we will get up. Yeah, Gopa.
I just have one thing to say, because I've not really handled the HR operations role. So it is fine with every panelist that the candidate may be completely a duffu. So okay. I'm okay to volunteer. That's not an issue at all.
No problem. Huh? So you either get the job or you don't get the job. It's okay.
Yeah. So I'm ready for the game. Yeah.
Okay. So I have some observers also, but as I said, all observers are going to, but if we are finding, if we find that there is a short of observers, then one observer can do 2 interviewers. All right. Okay. So you can create your own, and then all the interviewers, I'm going to put them into one breakout room for 5 minutes so that they can have a strategy. Okay. So I will ask Vilma to put Minal, Arijit, Vanessa, and Minal, right? And Monisha. All the interviewers into one breakout room for 5 minutes so that they can create a strategy, list out things. And I will also come in there. Okay, guys? Vilma? Okay, let me just check. Hello, Vilma?
Yeah, hold on, I'm doing it. Just
sorry. Acha, you are there, is it? Okay.
Where is Vanessa?
How much time do the interviewers want? 10 minutes? Okay. So you can give them 10 minutes for their breakout room. In the meanwhile, observers also can make their own preparation.
Where is Vanessa?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
I can't. Your name? What is the name? That's
Vanessa M.
Vanessa M.
Manisha is there. Minal is there. Majumdar is. Sorry.
Arijit, not Majumdar. Arijit, Minal, Vanessa,
Arijit, Minal.
Arijit, then Monisha. I can't see Monisha.
Yes. Arijit, Gopa, Minal, Monisha have been put.
Okay. 4 people, that's it.
Where is Vanessa? I can't see Vanessa.
Vanessa, I can see here. She's there. Vanessa
Now
M.
I'm here.
So in the list you are not coming.
If I'm there on the call, how can I not be in the list?
We all can view her, ma'am. Vanessa.
No, yeah, I got it. No, Manisha, you can. So room has been opened for Arijit, Gopa, Minal, Monisha, Vanessa.
Yeah, 10 minutes for you guys.
So, ma'am, do I need to, because I'm the candidate, right?
You are the candidate. So if you listen to all their questions, then
Yeah.
so you are outside the room. You don't have to go into the room.
Sure.
The observers will have to do the preparation here in the main room. And they have to identify or they have to write down whom they are going to observe. As I said, every observer will have one interviewer. So we have Rachna, then Renuka, Prachi, Devendra. So please decide and let the other person know so that there are, observers for all the interviewers. You know, sometimes then it will happen that there is no observer for one particular interviewer. Okay. So that is something you need to just talk to each other and say that whom you are going to observe.
I can observe Meenal, Prachi this side.
Okay.
I can, yeah.
Yeah.
Meenal
Yes. That's right. Prachi is doing Meenal. Rachna?
Yes, ma'am. I'll do Vanessa.
Okay. Rachna is doing Vanessa. Then Devendra?
I will follow Arjit.
Arijit. Okay, why not? Somebody in the opposite. Okay. Then Archana?
Archana is Vanessa.
Okay. Okay. Then Renuka?
I'll observe Monisha.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Anybody left? Majumdar. So whom will you do? Majumdar.
Ma'am.
Whom will you observe? You have a very important role. Whom will you observe?
You can observe Gopa.
Okay. You write down all the responses which Gopa is saying. Okay.
What I have to write down?
But the focus is more in terms of the interviewer. So I want you to,
okay.
Anyone, Minal, Arjit, you can do any one of them. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anybody left? Observers?
Ma'am, left. Archana here.
Archana. Whom would you like to observe?
Ma'am, anyone.
Anyone? Vanessa?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. So we have 2 people observing Vanessa. Nah.
Ma'am, Prachi this side, I just have one question, which is more like a confirmation question. So what we have to do is we have to, at our own end, pick up 2 technical skills and 3 behavioral skills, put behavioral indicators to them, and then a weightage for each. That's it, right? And then
are
observe.
You observing or are you interviewing, Prachi?
I'm observing.
Okay, you are observing. So what you will observe is you will write down a question. Whenever Meenal is asking a question, you will write down the question / also what Gopa, what in what manner, what was the response of Gopa? Okay. Because later on when we analyze, we will analyze what was the purpose of that question, and it we'll do this.
No, if I remember and if I've understood rightly, what you said earlier, we have to also create that table where those we have to put weightage to the technical skills and the.
Yeah. So all this the interviewers will do. Okay.
Okay.
So at this point of time, the interviewers are going to do all that.
All
I want
right.
you to just
Got it.
observe. Done?
Got it. Got it.
Okay. So I think just about the 10 minutes are getting to be done. Let's just wait.
Is it possible that all of us except Gopa can get into the breakout room for the last 1 minute and be
Absolutely.
sure that
Yes,
I'll tell you why.
yes.
Because we
sure.
can just get on to what technical skills they have prioritized and what behavioral skills they have prioritized, so that we know that all of us are assessing Gopa on the same parameters.
Correct.
And not looking at different competencies altogether and the answers.
Sure, absolutely.
Shall I put them in?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gopa, they're all conniving. Huh? Again. Poor Gopa is left alone. Huh?
No problem. I humbly, submit myself for being the bakra. They can judge, not an issue.
Gopa, you can ask them questions, additional information.
Yeah. I can only tell you this much, that I'm ready to project myself as one of those candidates.
Right now, I'm not giving you some instructions to make a role play. I want you to be what you are self. Okay.
Okay.
Vilma, you think it's over? There's 10 minutes is over. Huh?
When there are 4 heads, preparing the questions. So,
So
there would be some chaos. Then they would come. Agree on some part.
Send out a message saying that Abhi another 3 or 4 minutes enough. Huh?
Another
5 minutes.
37. Oh, I know 32 minutes.
Okay. Done.
40. 340 will go in.
340 we can start.
Gopa will go in into 340.
And then we will give them interview time 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
15 minutes. 15.
Because we'll have to put a timeline. I know how it happens otherwise. Oh, never ending. So 15 minutes. Because there are 4 interviewers, right? At least even if they ask 2, 3 questions.
The best part in this entire exercise is that when they will ask the question, we'll just see, they might be aligned, they may not be aligned. And then you can also see the observers' feedback,
That's why I asked observers, please write whatever the question verbatim.
So, Gopa, you too also have a set of questions which you would like to ask them with regard to the role, your expectations, or some queries or whatever clarifications you would seek that you can ask.
Sure.
So, Gopa, are you involved in recruiting now?
No, ma'am. I was
only to operations.
I'm completely into L&D for the last 12, 14 years now.
In the same organization?
No, in various organizations. Various organizations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this in this
I just had some bit of exposure in bulk recruitment when I was rather 15 years back when I was with ICICI Bank. I was doing recruitment for the frontline salespeople.
So right now you are here in this organization since when?
Last 9 years, 2012 onwards.
Oh, you are with Pune Agarwal last 9 years.
Okay, it's time now, Gopa. You can join in.
Are we all getting into the main room or where?
No. There is only one room.
Okay. So we will do it in let them come back and we'll do it here only. Hello?
You want them to come out?
No. How do you want? Should we all get into that room?
Yes, we will all go into that.
How do we do that?
Okay.
You join in now?
So I'll get into the room, huh?
How do I join the room? Okay,
so you will have to allow us to get into the room.
Yeah.
Nirmala, I'm putting you inside.
Okay.
You're in. Gopa, yet to join. Please join.
HRMS?
Yeah.
HRMS में threshold competency?
Here the Excel understanding or a comfortable with numbers, number crunching. This should come as a HRMS.
Okay, that's knowledge, but it's basically a database management, right? So also an understanding. Yeah, it also has to do something with the technology. I mean, that may come in the differentiating factor, that which can be the best technology or the best database which would be good for my company based on the needs and requirements of my business. Yes, that's also important. All the organization process overviews.
At a differentiating, you could write more in terms of, what is happening in similar industries, current trends, practices with reference to HRMS or whatever in peer companies or, or in the similar industry, what are the best practices?
What can be the skills, differentiating skills in HRMS?
One is
IT
orientation.
He
need not be a coder or anything, but he definitely should have a, definitely that skill in terms of
analytics
skills should be there.
Should be good with Google Apps.
So can we say HR analytics in HRMS differentiating skills?
Yeah, absolutely.
HR analytics.
That's a skill.
Okay. When it's performance management process, the threshold should be having a basic Data management.
Yes.
Process.
Data analysis.
Data analysis and management. Okay, for performance management system, when it is threshold, so basic understanding of the vision, mission, the objective of the organization.
Yeah.
That should be the
I
basic.
just write 2 now because you have already written
Okay.
then HRM is enough, because otherwise it's going to get too long.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So now behavioral competencies, can we put leadership?
Leadership is definitely, but very broad. Be a little more, yeah, leadership is broad.
But the interpersonal, what Vanessa was talking, so we can put
Interpersonal
that
and
here.
networking skills.
Stakeholder management is very, very critical, no?
Yes, stakeholder management. HR business partnering, that would come in the technical competencies, not in behavior.
Absolutely. That's not a big
So stakeholder management. Customer orientation also is under stakeholder management.
It can come as sub competencies there.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, just 2 or guys, only 2. Only 2. That's good enough.
Ma'am, how would you classify presentation skills? I mean, presentation in the sense that since he's an HR head, he would need to present all this data and all this stuff to the CEO, MD of the organization, or even to the board, right? So does what?
So since you are saying that, so that means effective presentation skills or effective
communication and presentation.
You can write, yeah, you can do communication skills.
Okay.
Yeah, so can we say effective communication and presentation skills?
Yeah, in communication, both presentation and spoken and written as well, right?
अर्जित वर्टिकली लिखोगे क्या, क्योंकि उसका बार्स डालना पड़ेगा ना 1 2 3 मतलब competencies, if you can just write it.
दो ही लिखना because otherwise time लग जाएगा. Or only 3, 1 2 3 पे लिखना. 1 will be almost negative least, 3 will be excellent, 2 will be average. So first of all, whenever you are doing a BEI rating, first 2 likhna because average. Then write the first one, then write the third one. Becomes very easy.
No, ma'am, but we'll have to write the competencies separate. Acha, competencies.
No. What I meant is, whenever you are writing an indicator, behavioral indicator, to write those proficiency levels. Here, of course, you wrote least, average, and excellent. You can actually write that behavior there. First, write an average behavior, then write outstanding behavior, and write least behavior. It becomes easy for you.
Means we have to elaborate that particular.
So, but here for the purpose of interview, you just keep it as least, average, and excellent, because otherwise you're going to take more time.
But where did we put the leadership competencies? We have not put the leadership competencies.
The leadership ki jagah we had this discussion on leadership is too broad. So we made it very focused to stakeholder management.
That's it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Because under leadership, you will have various sub-competencies.
Under PMS, that's okay. Stakeholder management.
It would be under PMS.
Yeah, it's a behavioral competencies. The above are technical competencies.
See, even in stakeholder management, behavioral indicators will be like initiative, collaboration, right?
To put bar for behavioral this thing also. Does it demonstrate quite frequent, or does it teach others?
Arjit, it has to be under PMS. So Compen-Wen, HRMS and PMS are technical competencies, and stakeholder management is the behavioral competencies that we require for this role.
Or make it simpler. Avoid stakeholder, make it simpler. Just write, what is it? Effective communication skills.
PMS के नीचे लिखिए आप 16th row पे. Yeah. So now we can do the rating, like compensation and benefits. Where do you think the person should be in an HR head role? Ma'am, should we put the bars also?
Now, don't put the bars and all now. Let's start and I will keep helping you all. Okay?
Okay. So we'll define the questions now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just write 3 or 4 questions, guys. That's it.
Yeah. So for compensation and benefit, what question can we have for the HR head? Can we say that
what we could
situation,
do, you have written the technical competencies. Let us skip the technical competencies. We will just focus on 2 behavioral competencies. Okay? So that because we will understand the depth of your question. So we'll avoid technical writing.
Ma'am will be able to make the questions. It's not a problem.
Okay.
We'll be able to make. So for compensation and benefits, we can ask the HR head or the candidate, describe a situation where in your past experience, you have created any compensation strategy or were part of a team of creating creating a compensation strategy for your organization. What did you do? What did you exactly do in that role? So as an interviewer, I can ask this question. If compensation is an important criteria for me, I can put a question that, can you share any situation or an example where as an HR head in your organization, in your current or any other organization that you work for, that did you devise any compensation strategy for your employees? And what did you exactly do and how did you go about doing it? Can we put a question like this?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, can we write the question?
What I was wondering, guys, because we are short of time. Okay, you can just ask that one question, but give focus on just ask 2 questions in terms of maybe questions. You can do it right at that point of time. I want all 4 of you to think about some question, right? Because then I will actually process the data and tell you what was right, what went wrong, etc. Let's start the process and then we'll start handling it as we go along. Okay? Yeah. Vilma, can we get the others also into the
everybody is in the room.
Okay, everybody is watching, so they know everything.
Yes, they know everything.
Okay.
Just one suggestion, maybe there are just 4 competencies or other 3 competencies to talk about. So maybe one person can pick up one competency and ask questions around that.
Yeah. So what we are going to do here is it, guys. Okay, Gopa also is there. Now this interview will only be time bound, 15 minutes. All right. Now the way we will proceed with this interview is that the panelists, who are 4 people, have to ask 1 or 2 questions. Done? Okay. And so let us start. 1 question at least.
Only one question.
1 question only. So the focus will be on. They may have not written, etc. But let's go by the way it proceeds, and then we'll do the processing and also the learning. Yeah. I can't see Gopa anywhere. Gopa, are you ready? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. So the panelists are there. Okay. Now, please, one of you can become the panel leader and just introduce yourself just for a minute, 1 minute, and just your names, and then please start interviewing the candidate. Of course, with little introduction, very brief introduction, and then start. Because the focus is more in terms of competencies. How are you going to interview if you want to make it more competency based? That's the learning we want to do. Yeah. Where is the panel? Yeah, please get cracking.
Yeah, Monisha, can I go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, hello, Gopat.
Hi.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Thanks for taking your time out and coming for this interview. So on the panel, we have Monisha, myself, Meenal, and there's Prachi and Archit. Okay. I hope you would have gone through the job description and the role that we are looking at.
Yeah, I did manage to scan through that. Thank you.
Okay. So Gopa, you're in this role. We would require someone who has got a good knowledge of compensation and benefits. Yeah, in this role as in head HR. So could you describe a situation where in your previous organization or in your current organization, you have devised a compensation strategy? How did you go about it, and what exactly, what are the parameters that you looked into while devising the strategy? If you could just throw a little light on that.
Sure. So, firstly, let me also share with you that, I've handled Comp and Ben to a very, in comparison to the other roles, it was a little lesser area of the operation here. But then recently what we did was in my current role only, what I've done is, we faced a lot of challenges during the COVID period, when we actually saw that because I come from a non-banking finance industry, and I realized that because of the COVID requirements, staying at home protocols, people were not able to, go out in the market and do their regular jobs and earn the incentives. So we really had to relook into the payroll structure, especially for the frontline people. So we had to kind of not only ensure that they are reskilled and they do the teleconversations, with our customers who can pay back our EMIs. And then we changed the little bit of, we requested the, this particular team to bring about changes in the KRAs to a certain extent so that we could redefine the incentive parameters and accordingly make more scope for them to earn the money that they were already drawing when they were doing more of a port field visits. So that was one thing which we did. Secondly, in terms of the the benefits, because we realized that this is a difficult time for people to manage the costs if there was somebody falling prey to the situation, the pandemic. We did bring in changes about the employee benefits plan also. So we introduced, apart from the current employee benefit plan, that which is a Mediclaim and the the group insurance and the accidental insurance plan, we added on the top up benefit plan also for our all across all the levels. We did add on this particular benefit. While it costed us a little bit of extra cost the company, but then we did have a sharing platform also with certain roles which were in the senior level. So we, as far as the additional premium payment was concerned, we really did to convince our employees that they can pay partial premiums also. So I think these are the two things we did in the very recent past in order to ensure that my employees, they get the highest amount of take home and also benefit, they truly benefit out of the benefit plans that we have for our employees.
Ma'am, do you want me to ask further questions or cut it off here?
Yeah, if you want one more question, I'll allow.
Yeah.
So time in frame, because definitely then you want to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. So Gopa, you said that you all have done some changes in the current salary structure. So what was the earlier structure? What did the earlier structure look like, and what was the changes that did? And because of the changes, what was the impact?
So as I said, that initially our key role is to actually visit the customers. So most of my frontline people, about 2,000, 3,000 people, they actually visit the customer. They have certain visit KPIs and KRAs that I have to make 8 or 10 customer visits. I have a certain ratio of the cases that I must close in a given month. So which was not being possible in the COVID pandemic times. And that's why we created opportunities for them. We took help from the L&D team also. They kind of rescaled them to do all of these conversations with the customer over telephone. So telephonic skills, having video conference facilities.
Okay, so instead of 8 to 10 visits, now they were
doing
telephonic calls to people. Okay.
And obviously, as you would understand, because we are into the collection business, customers are not readily, interested to give money, especially when they were also going through tough time. So there was a lot of input to get the right kind of output that we were looking from the collection perspective. And also we wanted to ensure that the employees should be able to earn. Otherwise, what would happen is we have a fixed rate of their CTC, but at the same time, they also earn a substantial amount through the incentives. So we had to make scope for them to earn the incentive. I think that was what we did to sort of compensate from a sharp dip in the incentive income to certainly some manageable incentive income that we could provide.
So how did they go about doing their collections? Because they were still not visiting the vendors. Then how did they do it?
True. So we had taken certain teams into it was a cohesive project which we did. So there was an L&D team, there was the business strategic team has also come into the forefront, and we created opportunities for our customers to pay us online. So starting from Google, Paytm, and every possible NEFT. We did all of this at the back end so that our customers are comfortable paying us, our people are comfortable reaching out to the customers and ensuring the recoveries are happening and maintaining and ensuring that their KPIs are being met so that they can earn the incentive. I think that was the main idea. For us, both the external customer and the internal customer were focused. So that is what we did.
Okay. So based on that, you devised a new comp and win strategy based
True.
on this idea.
True.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, ma'am, I'm done.
Yeah. So you have to let the analyst know about it.
Analyst.
Yeah. Please, the next panelist.
So,
this is.
Yeah, Vanessa, you want to go? Please go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Hi, Gopal. This is Vanessa. I'm part of the team over here. I just wanted to understand from a perspective, since this is a more on the leadership role. So, how would you suggest, or if you can help with some examples that you have, done in, some projects done in the past in terms of understanding what are the analytical skills for that you bring to the table from a perspective of understanding what is the current, from a payroll perspective, let's put it that way. From a payroll perspective, how would you understand what is the current payroll structure and, devise a strategy for a new payroll structure to be put in place? Have you come across something like that in the past?
So, let me know if I've understood your question correctly. So you're possibly wanting to understand if we have done any kind of analytics in terms of the existing payroll structure vis-a-vis a proposed structure where we could sort of benefit more in terms of execution, or maybe extending better benefit to our employees. Is that the question?
Yes, on the similar lines. That's right.
Okay. So, yes, we did. Like I said, during the pandemic, the entire team got together. We actually did this analysis that we realized that people were not satisfied with their incentives getting hampered because of the lack of opportunity that they were having. That was one part of it. So we did get into the analytics of what was the average incentive being earned in the last financial year and the last quarter vis-a-vis what happened with the quarter starting April 2020 onwards. So we did find that the gap, and we did find that people were really facing trouble, all the more because there was financial issues, there were crunches, and there were the physical proximity issues with the customer, with the branches. So we really did take that particular analytics piece into our planning. Also, we realized that we had great amount of dependency on the branch accountants for us. We have about 300 branches, and we had a huge amount of dependency on the branch accountant for the collation of the incentive data or the productivity data. And that is where we did a little bit of analytics there, that how they were capturing the data, how it was being collated, and the kind of time that we were taking. So we realized that the average payout time, the turnaround time, was about 45 days. So essentially, what I was working for in the month of April, I would get paid not in the salary of April, but in the salary of May. when I'm paying out the salary for May, because my calculations would get over only by mid of May. So we really took this particular piece of information into consideration, that what is the process of data collection in terms of productivity, and then that gets translated into the incentive earning amount that gets collated at the national level, and then it goes to the payroll team. So while we had a very small payroll team working, and a very like individual contributors working on that particular piece, it would really take a huge amount of time. So as a fallout of this entire analytics, what we realized is that it is important for us to sort of outsource the payroll piece, especially this incentive calculation piece, because it was completely Excel based and manual based. So we kind of brought in a little bit of technology by appointing a certain vendor. We have appointed XYZ global vendor. I do not wish to take that name right away. So that particular vendor is now currently working for us, has picked up the strings from where we were actually struggling with. So now we are able to give out the incentives on month-to-month basis only, with only a lag time. The salary gets paid out within the 5th of this particular month, of any given month. The incentive gets paid out the very next 5 days. So we have reduced the TAT of the incentive payout from 45 days to only 10 days from the closure of the month. So I think that was some of the things which we did in terms of the analytics, and we could apply the outcome into defining a certain solution for our people.
Sure, thanks for that, Gopa. Also just wanted to understand, you mentioned that, you figured out that the incentive payout happens 45 days after the actual month. It's actually supposed to be paid. So how do you go about understanding the same in terms of what type of analytics was involved in understanding those numbers?
So, like I said,
and of course, you need to also explain, or rather present the same numbers to the management, right? In terms of the necessary approvals, or from the senior management, from a perspective of they should be aware that, okay, the incentive payout is happening after 45 days and not in the same current month. So what is your understanding of the analytics, first of all, and how did you present it to the management?
So I think I was very clear when we took up this project that if my FOS is field staff, which is almost 30% of my entire field workforce, of the entire total workforce, they were getting a part of their salary at a delayed stage of 45 days, which was not only known to the people who were earning it, but also to the people who were giving it away. So the board was very much aware that we were making the payouts only after 45 days. So since it was a challenge thrown to us,
I just intervene if you don't mind. I would like you to, understanding part, which is called the analytics. What is your understanding of analytics? I would like you to kind of, I'm so sorry, that must be Vanessa, right? But I want you to focus more on how did you convince your management? What is the did to convince your management? The second half of that question, if you could emphasize more on that.
So, shall I answer you accordingly, ma'am?
Yeah, to Vanessa only. I just thought, we will do less of the technical part, understanding of analytics, and more of how did you convince your management?
Right. So yes. So as I said, the fact that the incentive was getting paid out only after 45 days was well aware. It was in the knowledge of not only the receivers, but also the payer, those who were paying it out. So the board had clear indication of that. So we actually did this particular presentation and proposal to the board that if we are able to pay out the money at the fastest cycle time, it will not only motivate the people, to do better in the next month, but also it helps us as a retention tool, because money is one of the biggest motivators for people on the field level who really feel that, okay, if I'm getting, the more I'm doing, especially for the seasonal campaigns that we have almost every quarter. So it helps the business also to push the people to do better and do a larger size of business. So we actually did a pilot in 2 of the states out of the 21 states that we operate in. We did the pilot in 2 states. So we gave out incentives for 1 full quarter, right, within the next 10 days of the salary cycle. Once the salary was paid out, within 10 days, the incentive amount would also get into hit their bank accounts. So which really, help the people to get and gauge the happiness aspect of it, of the employee. And the employee was also very motivated. Okay, this was a great change for him. So the voice of our customers, they are my internal customers. So voice of the internal customers actually helped me to, and the pilot results, they helped me to actually place my proposal to the board. And they were convinced that, yes, if we could do that, that would be great. Yes, it did. The harder, the tougher part of the conversation was to, convince the management that we should actually hire an external payroll vendor. Because the entire automation, had we wanted to do it on our own, then it would have costed us more than what we are providing them as the service fee or the retention fee for the services that they are giving it to us. So I think that was more of a thing. I could show them that the capex investment in creating that kind of an infra within the organization, vis-a-vis giving it to the vendor organization, we could possibly save a huge amount of cost. So that was approximately, 35 to 40% of the annual cost that we could actually save. So that's the reason it was possible for me to not only sell the proposal to the management, we could actually launch it successfully.
Okay. So
sure, thanks, Gopa.
Yeah, thank you. So can we have the next interviewer?
So, Arijit?
Yep, please.
So, Gopa, have you ever faced a situation where you were not convinced with the decision of management? And if yes, then how did you go about it?
Yes, there has been a couple of such situations where possibly at a personal level, I would not agree to the management's decision. However, I did agree to that for one simple reason that, in our country, where we have this, the concept of fixed salaries are much more acceptable to people, especially at the junior and the middle level, roles. But it's somewhere in between, like a couple of years back, the management decided that in order to sort of, push the productivity norms, it would be better if we could sort of add in a variable component into the roles, where even at the roles which were at the frontline levels. I think, because you have to manage the emotions of all of these people, I can still understand adding a variable component or an annual performance bonus kind of a component for the middle level or the higher level, but having a substantial amount, into that kitty for the frontliners can be very, very challenging in terms of the acquisition of the talent in the first place. So that was a huge challenge for me to accept. While I was not very keen on, accepting this particular principle, but then we did negotiate. So while we were suggested that we put it as, like equally as 20 or 25% of the variable component, we could actually keep it at a very lower component that, okay, if I'm unable to, then the team actually got together and we sort of proposed and re-approached the management with certain changes in the policy, wherein we suggested that we would be talking about variable component only if you are saying that if you're also giving them an opportunity to earn better. So my 10% or my 15% of a variable component is applicable for my frontline leadership, which is an area manager who handles 10 feet on street people. I can actually tell him that, okay, 15% of your salary would be variable, provided I give him certain scope to earn the incentive if he pushes himself or his team members. So we had to sort of redesign the incentive scheme also. So the productivity norms were also skewed to a certain extent. That okay, your unit, initially we were having the KPIs were focused on not only the number of units that we would be selling in terms of the loan accounts, but it was also attached into the volumes. So there is something where we did a little bit of tweaking, and we said that if you do the numbers, and even if you do not reach the 100% of the volume, if you reach say up to 85 or 90% of the volume targets, then also you're eligible for that variable piece. So we sort of, we went down here a little bit so that we could sell them the concept of the variable component. I think that somewhere managed it. It was difficult because we really had to have a lot of focus group discussions with our frontline managers. There are about 300, 350 of them, and to get the buy-in, because we really didn't want to roll out a policy as a policy without taking the confidence of these leadership, frontline leadership that we had. So that was a huge exercise, which really took a lot of toll on the emotions, handling a lot of negative feelings as well. But then we could somehow launch it. Yeah.
And when your management wanted to it more, full, what I understand is that they wanted to introduce variable, which you proposed, and you reduced the weightage of the variation. That should be only 10%.
We really did not reduce the entire the deliverables. We just said one portion of the deliverable was sort of, flexi, in the sense that we were not harping on 100% of the volume. We were harping on only 85% of the volume, but the numbers, unit should match, so that, the basic target, the business target should not suffer. So I had to convince the business management from the target perspective. At the same time, I had to also convince my frontline supervisors that there was enough income opportunity for them to earn higher incentives if there was a variable component of say 15% or a 10%.
After implementing this, what is the result and how it is shaping up? And what is the feeling of the management now?
So management is happy. They are okay with it. While we have sort of not reached 100% of the volume target, but we are not very far behind. But then yes, the number of unit productivity has gone very high.
Okay.
Sure. Arijit?
Yeah, please carry.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Gopa. Well,
Arijit, yes.
Yes, me, Arijit. Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
Well, for this time, we were interacting with other panelists. Fine. I did come across a few of your statements. You mentioned that you were leading the HR for XYZ NBFC organization, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that you were having 300 branches to look into and employee size of 3,000 executives. Am I right?
So total employee size is that of 9,000. The frontliners are about approximately 3,500. Yeah.
Okay. So approximately 3,000. These were the people who were directly engaged with your collections, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and primarily their basic activity were making telephonic calls and to have the realizations on behalf of your organization.
During the pandemic period, yes. During the pandemic period, so yes, majority of it. But then not the entire pandemic period. Okay. Gradually, when we opened up, it was not only reaching out the customers, educating them on the all the various online mode of payments, and then convincing them to pay it online so that they don't have to get into the moratorium and they can continue to be safer, because moratorium.
So as I can, so what I perceive is that during onset of COVID, you migrated from more of a physical point of interaction to online mode of interaction. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if I may say, in terms of your process orientation, if you could give me insight as to two activities, as to what you did in terms of operations for pre-COVID period and what did you do during post-COVID period? Not post-COVID, during COVID period. What was the two basic process differentiation in terms of collections?
In terms of collections. Okay. So So I would just
previously how did the
yeah.
operation?
So I would revisit this particular.
Maybe you could be very brief, Gopa, because
Sure.
we want to now close the interview
Sure.
as well. Yeah.
So pre-COVID, essentially, a collection officer would have to make 18 to 20 physical visits to customer in a day.
So one executive, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. One executive making 3 visits, 3 physical visits to every customer, right?
No. One executive every day, 18 to 20 visits.
Okay, fine.
And not only visits, we call it activities, out of which, out of these 18 or 20 activities, he would have probably made 10 to 12 visits, physical visits. And these activities would also mean making phone calls, maybe initiating certain legal actions, maybe, reaching out to the third party. So there are very multiple activities which a collection officer does.
Okay.
All of these get captured into his system, which is there on his mobile. So this was pre-COVID. Post-COVID, we, with the help of the technology team, internal technology team, we changed certain norms. So obviously, if there is a visit field, I cannot key in my visit details if I have not visited. So we really had to bring in about huge and quick changes in the process flow of that POC, the point of collection application, which is there in his mobile. So we had to add a couple of tabs, like, for example, how many customers did you call? How many customers, did you reach out? So we really had a called versus reach versus conversion ratio. So all of those inputs had to be incorporated in the systems flow of the POC application for the field officer. So that was one of the biggest changes. So right now we are still continuing with that, and we are giving an opportunity to a collection officer to work both, on the telephonic or the audio, call based reaching out to the customer, and also to do the physical visits. So that is continuing. It is just only added as an option to the collection officer to do his job in a far more better manner and a faster manner. That's
okay. So what I get is, Gopa, during onset of COVID, this process initiation was made, and a software kind of a mobile-based application was provided to your executives as a support in terms of.
So the application was existing even before pre-COVID. We made changes in the application to accommodate the tele-selling part of it or the online collections part of it.
Okay. Now, during this COVID period, how did you lead your team into in terms of having this thing implemented a fresh activity, and how did your executives cope up with it?
So I think I was blessed enough to join this organization at a point of time when the organization is already very pro technology. So while most of the organizations started using online platforms like Zoom and Teams and etc. only during the COVID period, this organization has been using the online platforms in the last 4.5 years. So people were already aware of the Zoom platform.
Okay.
And patched it with the L&D team and the HR team in terms of, and also the business team, wherein we used to have these, rigorous sessions on educating them on how to, go about teleselling, or how to do about convincing, or even as a matter of fact, doing Zoom calls, video calls, WhatsApp video calls, to ensure and have a.
But you said, I'll cut you short, but you said those people were required to make 18-20 visits.
Sorry?
You said that pre-COVID period, those people were to make 18-20 physical visits.
Absolutely, right? So since they were not able to make the physical visits during the COVID times, we introduced WhatsApp video calls with the customer. That, okay, this is the customer, and the customer, and
Okay, fine, Gopa. In terms of video calling and
so just one more minute for you. Okay.
Sure. In terms of reaching out to the customers, I understand you use the Zoom platform. How did you integrate these activities across your department, spread across 300 branches, your internal recordings? How did you go about with the HRMS implementation? Are you aware of the present-day cybersecurity protocols and IT standards for implementation? For online.
Are you asking about the IT security part of it?
Yeah.
So the information security team itself was very much involved there. and our administrative department did a wonderful job of, moving the assets. Like, for example, we have about 230 telecallers. So the entire setup was set up in their homes. Of course, probably would have caused a little bit of problem in some of the people's space because space was a constraint. But then we did manage to establish the entire setup, including the Wi-Fi connectivity and the database and every access, including the information security team in each one of our workers' home, so that the business could continue. So the BCP plan was very much active, and the entire BCP team was, working hand in glove together to ensure that this pandemic should not stop us from doing. Yes, of course, it did kind of pace us down a little bit, but then we really picked up way faster. The turnaround time was faster. We took about 1.5 months time to just set up everything in place so that the workers could have the option of working from home with their systems located. So that was, I think, one of the best and the fastest things that we could do for our employees. And they were also comfortable that they don't have to move out, they don't have to visit the branches. And there was a huge amount of, employee communications done to ensure that all people are aware how the admin, HR, and any other support team, even the IT infra team, can be reached out to should they need any kind of help. So there was an extensive communication plan which was rolled out.
Yeah, Arjit, now I think you just should close the.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, let me thank all the interviewers. They were excellent in their questions, and they were well framed, both in width and depth. Okay. Thank you, Gopa, for kind of role playing and also for being there, offering to be the candidate. And thank you all observers. Okay. Now the tough part. First of all, let me wanting to know, how did the interviewers feel when I said, how did you feel when you were asking questions? So feeling, so did you find it tough? Did you feel good? So please respond independently, in the sense, don't, not the group. Anybody can volunteer and say, hey, I felt like this. Well, I always thought into questioning was. So how did you feel? First, from the feeling point, let us find out. Interviewers.
So, ma'am, I felt good because I was clear on what question I'm going to ask her. I knew the competency was given to me.
Meenal,
I was clear. Yeah, Meenal. I was clear and I felt good when I framed that question. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else want to respond?
I was feeling comfortable.
Okay, asking the question, you felt comfortable. Okay. Arjit?
Yes, I felt I could have been better on the behavioral aspect, means questioning the interview.
Okay. Now let me ask the observers one by one. Okay. I will give my definitely my inputs and all the processing, who asked what question, what was it like, and how. Let me ask observers. It's 4:27. Is that okay? We continue, or you want a small break? I mean, I am okay with continuing as well. So I only want to
good to continue,
ma'am.
Can we continue? Because if you break again, that momentum will stop. But I thought, but still I should ask. Okay. Please stop. What is that? Okay. Now let me ask the observers.
Stop screen sharing.
You can stop screen sharing. Yeah. Let me ask the observers. And I want the observers to make a remark with a question the interviewer asked, whom they observed, and how did Gopa respond. I want everything in verbatim, not, oh, I felt this way and that way. Some data, with the data. Yeah, please.
Hi, I can go first since Meenal started the conversation.
Prachi,
Prachi,
right? Yeah,
right.
Prachi, tell me.
So the first question that was asked by Meenal was, can you share any situation or example that you had devised around compensation and benefit for the organization, how did the strategy around the component went, and what were the parameters for designing and bringing about the change and implementing it? So response to that was, we looked at the payroll structure for the frontliners, considering that, KRAs of COVID, the frontliners got impacted due to the COVID-19 situation. We redevised that because we wanted to, have more pay being going out for these frontliners, because instead of they know they need more cash in hand. So that's how we tried changing the incentive structure. So this, I think, to a large extent, it did make sense. Gopa did answer it from a strategy standpoint. It was answered. Now,
let us just ask Meenal, right? Let us ask Meenal the purpose of that question. What was she wanting to know, and did she feel satisfied with the response of Gopa?
Yes, the purpose of my question was that as per the job description, the HR head was supposed to manage the compensation benefits, or was responsible for implementing the strategy around it. So my purpose was to see if the person whom I'm getting on board is competent enough and has got sufficient experience managing this piece. That was the purpose for which I asked this question.
So do you think your candidate was able to comprehend or get what you really intended for, or did the
I think Gopa, in whatever best of her ability, not being in that role, still managed to give me a very good answer, saying that, yeah, this is a strategy. And wherever I think I never had sufficient information, I probed further. I said, what did you exactly do? Please come up, and which also she shared.
Yeah. So just to add to Prachi, who observed her, Meenal, I think your first question, that is, opening question in terms of wanting to understand from the strategy point of view, was a very good question, broad question, a little open-ended, so that, and then followed up by probing questions. So that was a very good thing. So typically the interviewing technique to get more information, never ask closed questions, close-ended questions. That means yes or no. Or did you do compensation strategy? Gopa would have said, but unlikely though, Gopa, she would have said yes or no kinds. But then you did definitely ask an open-ended question.
A new incentive and a salary structure with the strategy in mind. And another one was, how did they go about doing the collection? So making it actually come alive in terms of trying to visualize the actual way it was done, and what was finally done was also communicated. I think here is probably specific, which gradually came up in the whole interview, that what was Gopa's role and how she really went ahead by doing what was her steps that she had taken at her end. That could have also been one parameter, could have
because of the paucity of time. But typically, for everybody, for all the interviewers, typically when we are doing interviewing, and also when we want to probe further and get more information, more than asking, how did you do? I think there were many, 3 or 4 people asking questions like, how did you go about, etc. We should be asking for what is that you did, because only when you ask something like what is that you did to, what are you asking, we are getting into a kind of a technique for a critical incident, behavioral event interviewing, where we use a technique called STAR technique. And I'm sure, being L&D professionals, everybody knows the STAR technique, right? Situation, S stands for situation, T stands for task, A for action, R for result. So when you say, what did you do? It leads the person into saying that I Even if the person says we, then you must ask, so what was your role? Are you with me? Because I don't want to know who, oh, we did this and I want to be very, very specific, saying that, hey, what is that you did? How did you go about? What was the action? What was the action you took? And of course, in the end result. So I think throughout the interview, I was actually watching out for these things, like, typically most of you, interviewing is not just, it is also a skill. So the more you ask questions, the more you practice, you will get the right kind of framing of questions. So especially when you want to probe, and especially when you are doing a competency-based interviewing, you need to probe further by asking or using a STAR technique by saying, hey, can you give me a critical incident? What is a critical incident? Not those everyday things which are happening, because you are able to evaluate through that situation as to what was the situation, what was the task, what was the action and the result, that, hey, what is the depth of this competency this person has? Are you with me, guys? Because that's one thing which clearly, like for example, Gopa, because having not been in that role, she could keep talking a lot, but there was, action. She that what is that she did? Again, Arjit asked something. I'll tell you, Arjit was asking, how did you go about software? So she could say, we did this, we did this. But typically when you're assessing a person, it's very, very important. That's why either there are 2 or 3 people who are there, who are recording, verbatim writing or recording, so that they don't miss out on action words, verbs. Because when I'm doing a competency-based interviewing, it is that action word which we analyze, code, and say, was it at a higher proficiency or is it a lower proficiency? Because that action word is something I can observe, and then having observed, I can measure it. Are you with me, guys? That's why I said first is observe, and then I will observe that behavior and put a measure to it. At what level was it? Very important. That's why these people who do competency-based interviewing, they have to speak less and listen more and keep just okay. And then what happened? Okay, because paucity of time, I was not letting the interviews were very good. They would go to any length till the cows come back home. They could have interviewed. But then since we are also sitting on a constraint of time, I was not giving them much of time. But having said that, I'm just wanting to add to your input, saying that so we need to probe. And I liked the 2 interviewers who kept, even Minal and somebody else also, follow-up question, not again asking something else, follow-up question, right? But one person asked, okay, let me come up to that, multiple questions. Okay, I think Prachi done a very good job of observing and also giving her responses and remarks. Thank you, Prachi. Can we have another observer, please? Yeah, let's go to Prachi now. Let's go to next observer. Guys, where are you? And am I not audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now, who is the other person who has observers? I don't know where are the observers. Rachana or Archana, Renuka. Okay, let's take Majumdar. Whom did you observe? Arijit.
You're on mute.
You are muted. Who is on mute?
I observed
Arijit. Okay.
What I found that he did a lot of probing questions. Lot of probing questions he has used to ask to get it clarified. The more and more information from Gopa, and Gopa always yes, fantastically answered. But one of the things that it could be a better one, that if simultaneously, which Arijit also agreed, the behavioral part can also be played a major role rather than the assessment for the technical competencies. Technical competencies because since the position of this particular person is of a senior level,
exactly,
and the senior level, the technical nitty-gritties is good, but the behavioral part actually leading to the result, because he or she is handling a group of employees, or the group he is having his own team. So own team members are there to support all this the assertiveness part or influencing part, or maybe the networking part,
excellent,
or the leadership.
Yeah.
That
So
somewhere
can I
needs to
respond?
be
Excellent
checked,
point.
which I think that there
Excellent point,
an
Majumdar,
improvement
because
area.
I was, yeah, absolutely. I was wanting to tell that, saying that when you are interviewing a senior person, it is understood that he would know all the technical. So the focus typically in real life, when you are interviewing a senior person, is more from the behavioral aspect. Okay, more from the, because it is understood that he would have a knowledge of most of the technical competencies, and go deeper and deeper, asking for real critical incidents in terms of how, if there was any kind of a strategy, so what is that he did, how did he go about, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the challenges from stakeholder management, because whenever you are initiating a change as a leader, it is not just what you are doing, but how do you build consensus, how do you negotiate with them. So these are some of the critical things which really come about. A small policy change, you will see that there will be so many people who will object to it, right? How does he get a buy-in for all those things from all
Because
the
this role is having this role is having a lot of critical thinking areas which needs to be checked, because this is a position, is a very important position of complement managers, or this particular professionals. A lot of critical thinking, as rightly pointed out by you, that a small policy change is having a huge ramification across the industries. So that actually areas of improvement.
No, in fact, Gopa, what she talked about, even a change in the pay mix, like for example, incentive. So how would people respond? How would management respond? Lot of things, and I'm sure that's a very nice thing you brought. It's a change, right? Change in the pandemic, but to bring build a consensus, to bring everybody on the same platform. It's a total change management initiative. So how do you actually, especially your detractors who oppose the idea? So there was so much of behavioral input. So I think because of the paucity of time, I'm not saying that the interviewers could have done much better, but definitely there was a lot of this curtailment on time aspect. So we needed to cut. But yes, having said that, typically probing happens, probing doesn't happen immediately after every question. So you have to pause, you have to give a lot of time, so that, and watch the body language of the person, because what happens is the candidate can fake, he can say anything. And typically when you watch the facial language or the body language, though these days you can't really watch everything, but yet when you do a Zoom meeting, I'm sure you can see something of the facial expressions. Now for the assessor, you also have to keep in mind that when you're asking for a critical incident, testing for certain competency, you also have to have another couple of critical incidents which will also assess for the same competency, so that you can bring about validity. Because please understand our definition of competency. If that competency is there, it will show results, or it will show up in different situations. Okay, it doesn't mean that it will show up only in one situation. So it has to have consistency. It is something like what we say, if a manager is walking on the shop floor, he could be walking for anything. He could be probably walking because his legs are paining or whatever. So it has to have some intent. So likewise, the existence of competency is there, then it will show up in many situations. So you need to check for them. Okay, but I think overall, if you were to comment on Arijit Majumdar, yes, though there was a paucity, I think his framing of question was good, and he did not indulge in multiple questions. Okay, there is one person who's asked for multiple questions where Gopa had to clarify again. We'll come to that when the observer will come to that person. Okay, all right, great guys, Majumdar. So thank you so much for the observation, and good work done both by the interviewer and the observer. Can we go to another observer? Yeah. Who has observed? Till now, I know that Arijit, we had some feedback for Arijit. We had for Vanessa also. For whom did we not have any feedback till now? There were 4 interviews. 2, yes, we had. Who's the... Manisha, did you have any feedback on your...
Ma'am, for me, you've not given feedback.
Okay. Can we ask one of the observers who observed Manisha as an interviewer?
Renuka had done. Renuka.
Yeah, I was there observing Monisha. I think Monisha, other observers have already covered a lot of points, but Monisha did ask specific question and probed Gopa on the certain points. What I felt was, there was a question. There was no question on change management towards. I mean. The way management has responded to the to Gopa's opinion, we have seen that those kind of question, but the employee's response was very critical, in the decision making. How was the result? I think Monisha did a job of asking, what was the result of Gopa's activity. That one thing I appreciate that she considered asking of. I think that was the good thing. But yeah, specifically, what was the response, and if there was a negative response, how did she handle it? Was the question I was expecting. Yeah.
So, well, I think as for Monisha, okay, she was fairly good in a framing of questions. Okay, then we only let her ask just one question, and then there was a follow-up question, more in terms of a technical question. And definitely she tried to apply the STAR technique. Did you do that, Monisha? Because in the end you were asking for, okay, then what did you do, then what was the result? So I thought probably she was wanting to apply the STAR technique. Yeah, paucity of time, definitely. But I think, yes, as I think most of you did not flip from one question to the other, you tried to follow it up and ask questions, and that was a good approach as I see it. Okay, right. Good. Thank you. Thank you from the assessor and also candidate, and also not candidate, observer and the interviewer. All right. There was one more person I think we have left. Vanessa?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am, this is Vanessa here.
Yeah.
So in regards to my feedback as well, I know because it was a mix of questions that was asked, right?
Yeah. So I made a note then. I said Vanessa has asked multiple questions, because why? I'm sure you got that feeling, because when Gopa had to ask, I really did not get what did you kind of mean by it? She was seeking clarification. So again, when you're asking questions, no to multiple questions. Ask one question at a time, another follow-up question, another follow-up question. But absolutely a no to multiple questions. I think that was a takeaway for you, right?
Sure.
Okay. Or else I think you are very clear thereafter asking for questions. And
Madam,
yeah.
Can I ask a small clarification? Because
please.
Suppose as our organization, we are hiring the talents from the campus, mostly the engineers, and they are fresh candidate without any job experience and knowledge. How we can utilize this behavior enabled interviewing or the
So Majumdar, though we lost you in a bit in terms of the voice was not very clear. First, having gone through the entire thing, I want to know from the group, how would you respond to this, sir? What would be your response? Majumdar is asking, we are at entry level, we only want engineers. We check for just knowledge and skill in terms of technical competencies. Do we still have to do a competency-based interviewing, or do we still have to do something in terms of competencies? That's a key question. How would you respond?
Yes, we can still do a competency-based interviewing. Now, because this person doesn't have any past industry experience, doesn't mean that he doesn't have any experience in terms of the projects that he has done in his college life, you know, or in organizing any events or doing things. Because all the leadership, the initiative, we can also be able to gauge if the person has done any activities in a school, college, or professional life, if he has managed any projects, if he has done, you know, anything. So we can check on those lines also, that, you know, in your school, in your college life, or as a professional, when you have to submit your project, you know, what are the initiatives, or were you a part of any project? What initiatives did you take? How did you go about doing it? So I think you can still gauge the technical competencies. They would not be able to gauge, ma'am, but I'm quite sure the behavioral they would be able to gauge.
So here is it. You are absolutely right, Prachi. So typically when we go for campus recruitment, say for example, yeah, somebody was wanting to respond.
I said I'm Minal.
That was Minal, not Prachi.
Okay, Prachi. You all sound so alike. Okay, thank you. Now, absolutely, to respond to Majumdar's question, whenever we go to most of the organizations like TCS or Infosys, when they go and do campus recruitment for engineers, they just don't indulge only in technical competencies, which are knowledge and skill on the technical subjects. It's very, very critical that you also do the behavioral aspect, but it varies at an entry level. What is that you really require when you're recruiting an engineer for your organization? A, you want him to be high on the initiative, right? That means easy. Does he have initiative? Right. Two, yes, you also want to look at passion, right? Does he have a passion for learning? Because in an entry level, you are not asking for past experience achievements, because he does not have any. He's just at an entry level. You are looking at passion, huh? And does he have the passion? Because that's how he'll be motivated. Yes. And three, if that organization is such that he's going to work on many software, is he great on what? The learning curve, his uptake. Okay. Now, or also if you are working on, many a times if you are working on teams, you're also looking at, hey, is he a great team player? Now you may say, but he hasn't worked anywhere. So how do you go about? So competency, again, by definition, doesn't, if you have it, you can display it anywhere. So therefore, you're going to look at this, hey, tell us about a time when you actually in the past, in your academic, in your college life or whatever, you organized something. What did you organize? Okay, any event? Then you start asking, what was it about? How did you go about? What was your role? What is that you did for that? Why do you want to know? You want to see his initiativeness. You want to see as if he was just a member, did he participate, and what all did he do, right?
Correct.
So therefore, in most of our entry level jobs, we do something called, everybody does that in HR round. What do you do in HR round? Ultimately, you are evaluating, assessing his competencies, those 1 or 2 key competencies. By checking his knowledge and skill, you take a person and tomorrow this guy can't even get along with people. Is he good enough for you? Right?
Right.
So, therefore, even at an entry level, you have a lot of information. His past achievements, be it in sports, be it in anything. How do you spend your time? That's the best question. So what is that you do? What are some of the things you have achieved? How did you go about? So know more about him, of the past successes. Then you would know a lot more information about the person in terms of his behavioral competencies. Okay. So guys, before we, I think we can take a small bio break of 5 minutes or 6 minutes and come back. Now it is 54. Please be back by 5 or 5:05. Then we can actually go through all the list of things 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 while doing a competency-based interview. Is that fine with you guys? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
We can just take, yeah.
By the end of the break, can I get a sort of a, a lead whether I get the job or not?
So that is for the panel to decide, no? I was also an observer. So we'll tell them, please by 5:30, please make a decision and tell us whether she's what is it, rejected or whether she's being offered a role. Okay, guys. So great.
Thank you so very much. Thanks a lot.
We'll go take a, and thank you so much, Gopa. You're a very good candidate.
Gopa is a very good candidate, and sometimes I was wondering that whether whether she is interviewed or interviewing.
But let me tell you, the secret of a good interviewer is to listen more. Here it is not a showcasing of communication skills from the interviewer angle. You have to listen more, get more out of it. So you spend, rather you are both the ears have to become very active in listening rather than all the time, asking more questions. Only ask questions when you have to probe or ask another new question. Otherwise, you have to get more information from the candidate. Okay, guys, let's take a quick break. Okay. Okay.
She already 5.
Okay, guys, welcome back. Welcome back. And that was a great learning through experiential interviewing of competency-based interviews. And to add to that, let us actually look through the presentation and see what additional inputs can be gained. This will actually cement and also reinforce your learning and thinking. So when we are doing a competency-based interviewing, as we did, we have to prepare for the interview, because typically if we don't prepare for the interview, then we would not be actually asking the right questions or trying to prioritize on the right kind of competencies or giving weightages to them. In a sense, then the result would be not having the right criteria, which will result into mismatch, misfit, and the predictability and validity of the candidate we have selected will be very, very low. So therefore, we need to prepare and also understand some kind of a legal considerations. Probably in India, we do not really look into a lot of legal considerations. But in the other countries, some of the legal considerations, like probably, something like, knowing your religion and marital status, etc., are also very, very inappropriate and legally considered, that you should not be asking some questions. Absolutely a no-no. In fact, in other countries, like in US, under the pay equity law, you cannot even ask what is your past or last drawn salary. Unlike India, where we ask, okay, fine, what is your salary? You cannot ask for a salary because, there is a law called pay equity law. Okay, because if you are finding the person fit enough, irrespective of whatever the last salary drawn is, you need to pay, because when you do a job evaluation and ensure that, that this X job is worth so much, and if you have found this person to be fit enough for that position, you need to pay, irrespective of whatever amount he was drawing in the last job or the previous job. Okay. And when we are talking about competency-based interviewing, we are focusing more in terms of those behavioral competencies and also the skills which, actually fit or tie into those competencies. As we have seen that the 80-20, that 80% of is submerged and 20% of the iceberg is above the water. And what is above the water, which is knowledge and skill, can be easily tested through interviews, through question answer method, etc. But what is very, very critical and challenging is to test for something which is really submerged in water. So you need different ways of asking questions, and one of the most common and very effective method is using a BEI, which is called behavior event, that is everything around critical incidents or situations, which will speak a lot in terms of what the situation was, and what was the task, what was the action, and what happened in terms of the results. So it is not necessary that when you're doing a BEI, all the situations the interviewer is narrating, that they should be leading into always a successful outcomes. Need not be, because there are, you should also try and ask him, give us any critical incident where you really did not, achieve what you wanted to, or where you were not able to be successful. Give us an incident. What was it about? Because you get to know a lot in terms of even situations where they have been unsuccessful. Okay. I'll send this to you all. You can actually find out then, that how many, what is it? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Are you able to see this, guys?
No. Screen is not visible.
How come suddenly this screen went out of action? Now?
No.
No, 1 second. Something to do with my screen only. Okay, you can see now. Yeah, I'll put it in the now.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many faces you can spot? You can do it when Vilma sends this PPT to you. All right. Yeah, Arjit was asking one question, right? Job offers to joining ratio. So what I meant at that point of time is taking a look at all the stages of recruitment process, which we typically call it as the selection funnel. And if we analyze the yield rate, yield is that the output at every level, that itself will speak a lot in terms of how effective or how ineffective is my process. Because when he said, if my offer to job ratio, joining ratio is only 10%, as low as 10% or 15%, that also shows that the entire selection funnel is very, very effective. So at each and every step, one needs to check the yield rate and see and analyze with data as to what has been the issue there. Okay. Yeah. So just wanting to. So we talked about how we have to actually focus on competencies, and then when we are doing a competency-based interviewing, then use mostly open-ended questions. Then when we are using open-ended questions, specifically look out for behavioral responses, because most of the time when we are interviewing, you do not get behavioral responses. Typically, the candidate, to a great extent, even if you see Gopa's narration, it will be based on, I achieved this, I did this. Sorry, Gopa, but yes, 80% or 60%, we will only end up as a candidate telling, what I did, or the focus is more on results. But for an interviewer, the focus is not on results. It is the journey, the process. How, what did you do? How did you go about? That is more important, because that's where is the action verbs. I have to look out for action verbs loudly and say, hey, these are the things which will actually, when I circle, classify and analyze, will give me or throw light on the person's competencies. It is not the result which will give me the competencies, the depth of the competencies. It is, or the proficiency level of the competency. It is not more. So I'm emphasizing result, because do not focus on results. You have to focus on the process. How did he go about? How did she go about? What is that she did in order to do this? Okay. What made her do this? Even the intent will be known. Why? What made what made you do that? Okay, so that helps you in terms of when you extract behavioral responses, it can then, you can validate, you can classify, and then get into, okay, fine. You can predict to certain extent your future behavior responses, because past behavior is well known that it allows us to predict future behavior. Okay, some of the things what you need to do for a preparation of the interview, like again, the emphasis on action verbs. Action verbs are very important. Just to give you an idea, what are action verbs? Generating, proposing, originating, initiating. So these are all action verbs. So you need to understand as an observer also whether I can easily recognize these action words, because action words will actually tell you the behavior which can be then measured, because those are the things which tell you who is a poor performer and who is a successful performer. Because the candidate can always give you ambiguous in terms of he can lead you into ambiguity and also kind of focus more on the results, but you have to pull him back all the time and talk about action verbs. So why am I emphasizing so much on action verbs is in a competency base, it's mostly action verbs which you want to observe. That is, you're searching for behavior. Okay. And of course, as a pre-work, we all talked about the job description is important, because ultimately if you don't have job description and if you don't have the cases there and the KRS and the KPIs, then you wouldn't be able to outline your competencies. So therefore, a proper job description is very, very important, which you can get through a job analysis. And we discussed about that, I think, in the first session or so. Okay. Now, if you can see, this is something called the motivational fit. So typically organizations, before even he is, what is it? You check for the technical competencies. You also want to check, hey, what is the, why is he motivated? So you have to know the intent for joining this organization. In fact, most of the organizations give this first psychometric test, which you can actually use it, called the career drivers instrument. Has anybody gone through the career drivers instrument? Have you all gone through that career driver instrument? So it indicates there are those 9 drivers. So it indicates, is money the motivation, or is originality, what in terms of, or is it affiliation, or is it status? What is the intent for this person to be attracted to this job? You really have to find out, and one can find out by giving this career drivers instrument and see if it matches with the job. And if you have something like 70 to 85% fit, then you will be able to say, hey, this guy is really going to stay on in the organization. In fact, I have used this instrument, I mean, in our organizations, couple of organizations, and I found that this instrument was highly valid. So all of you can also use for your own peers, for your subordinates, very useful instrument. Okay. So the motivational fit is very important, because only when he is motivated, then even if he is not able to, there is something called the can and the will. So even if he cannot, he will learn to do the job. But if there is no motivation, even if he can, but he will not. So
Madam,
that
career driver instrument is a psychometric tool?
Yeah, it is called Richmond scale inventory.
Okay, visual scale inventory.
Yeah, Richmond scale inventory. And if you want to read a little more, and if you are one of those persons who like to interest, and also for all the L&D professionals, you can read this book, Career Anchors by Edgar Schein. Okay, EDGARSCHIEN, who has done some great work in the area of career anchors. So when you are asking, when you are doing a competency-based interviewing, you should also question him in the terms of asking him, what was satisfying to him in the last job, what role, what was that thing. So if you probe further and further, he would give you some kind of achievements in terms of what really satisfied him, so that you can align with the requirement you are actually looking for. The motivational fit, of course, this is the entire selection process, where you are also looking for red flags in terms of, is there been a gap, is there ambiguity. So red flags are very important. In you need to really look out for them in terms of arrogance, or is there some kind of does he really prefer to work alone, is he a team member, is he uncomfortable making quick decisions, etc. and etc. All right. Okay. Yes, guys. Typically, the most common and fatal hiring mistake is to find someone with the right skills, right? But the wrong mindset is, and hire them on the theory we can change them all. So typically what we say is, hey, hire for attitude and train for skill, which is a common cliche. All right. So I think that's what we talked about, open-ended questions, by using all this: how, why, when, where, what, who, which. These are those common questions used typically in interview, because closed questions do not give any kind of a data. Can anybody tell me what is a closed question? What does it look like? And when
answer can be given by yes or no. Yes.
Absolutely. Say, like for example, a question which just says, oh, have you done certification in recruitment? Yes, what the person can either say yes or no, right? So does it give you a lot more information? Oh, are you from this place? Or have you everything in the CV if you are just asking, okay, so therefore they are not going to lead you anything. So closed questions only for very specific and you want to have a reassurance, you do not ask any closed questions. So for example, very, very clear, right? They start with words like do, is, can you do this, will you do that, would you? So they actually end up only saying yes, yeah, I know, or yes or no for answer. No hypothetical questions. There was this famous question, what are you going to be in the next 5 years and 10 years? So hypothetical questions, why do you think today we don't actually ask hypothetical questions? Anybody? Why there is not much relevance to these hypothetical questions?
Hypothetical question gets you hypothetical answer also. So you cannot validate then.
No, nor do they predict a behavior, because their responses will depend on what you really want. It will be suiting to your question, right? So they cannot predict or they cannot validate what exactly you want. So today nobody is asking hypothetical questions. And also today nobody is asking the famous question, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Now, gone are the days 2 decades ago. That was the question people were trained. Hey, please, you should know your strengths. And why do you think people are not asking strengths and weaknesses? Unless, of course, there are these people who are very traditional and they're still continuing to answer that question. Does it add value? If you are asking a question which is not going to add value, then what is the point? You should not be asking that question. Okay? Right? Unless and until, of course, there is something, a strength which you feel it is very, very important and it is critical and it is not trainable, then you have to check for it whether he has it or not. Like, for example, a counselor empathy, you need to check for it. So therefore, it's very, very important. But otherwise, I think asking questions like strengths and weaknesses are absolutely a no-no these days. Leading questions. What are leading questions? Anybody give me an example of a leading question?
You like to do something beginning like that.
Any plans of getting married?
Something, leading to a very positive or so you're almost giving it. Oh, are you going to, I mean, you are actually giving him an answer saying that literally, oh, you must be knowing this, right? Oh, you must be knowing the MS Excel. Yes, I know the Excel. So there is no value in that question. So therefore, no leading questions. Most of the time, you should be asking for follow-up questions, proving questions. Okay. So I think we have actually covered most of the things which you really need to know in terms of a competency-based interviewing. And Vilma has already given you so much of material where it makes it so easy for you all to read and know more about the competency-based interview. What I would like to spend the next 5 or 10 minutes in understanding, before understanding, if you have any doubts, clarifications, and then you could also write to me if you have any, so that definitely it will be a pleasure to clarify your doubts. Now, this is, I think, who asked me? Prachi? Yeah.
Yes, I had asked you in the last session.
This is the scoring sheet, assessment center grid for rating. Can you make out what it is like? Now here, if you see SSRs, NIM, JLV, CMC, these are just names, okay? These are the various SSRs. Now this sample shows you the rating or the grid for a candidate. So the name of the candidate here, I've just put it as XYZ, okay? Now, what are we looking at? What are the dimensions am I looking at in this person? I'm looking at all these dimensions which have been listed: awareness, incisiveness, imagination, drive, confidence, sensitivity, cooperativeness, patience, etc. All right. Now I'm trying to get a report from all the assessors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 assessors they have given me, and it's a summary of the report. Right. Now, in group negotiation, okay. Now this test examines the scores given. It examines those dimensions. But if there is a black area, it does not, this technique or this tool does not examine or evaluate those other dimensions which have been actually colored absolutely black. Okay. For example, I'm going to send this document to you. Say, for example, in tray. In tray, in fact, it looks at all the dimensions, if you have noticed. All right. Now, group solving, it does not look at imagination. It does not look at sensitivity. It does not look at patience. So, how it is summarized? So, what happens? All the assessors submit their report, and then you have the result. For every dimension, based on the observations of these assessors. So, if you see on this one dimension, that is awareness, it is 4. Then the other one, it is 3. So, all those areas like red, 3, 2, 5, 4. Okay, 2. So this is the scoring report for any candidate based on all the dimensions, giving all the exercises which have been evaluated. Now you can also have a, just 1 minute, you can also have a score sheet for individual exercises. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you score sheets for just in-tray, for group problem solving, or like 3 or 4 individual ones, and also this group one. Okay. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, actually, madam, here the result is showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with a red highlight in any of the one. Now,
yeah.
how these scores are derived?
The score has been derived. Okay, this is what I will send you. So, say for example, this XYZ, or say for example, Gopa was being observed, okay, in tray.
Okay.
So there is again a scoring sheet just for in tray. I will send you that. Okay. So based out of that, and again for group problem solving, for analytic, so the overall rating has been summed up to 4.
Okay.
So is it an average, ma'am?
It will actually not be a weighted average. Typically in assessment center, you never go by average. You only go by saying that, it's not even saying, okay, you said 2 and you said 3 and I said 4. So let us take a consensus of weighted average. I mean, add up together, and because behavior is not average. Okay. So the assessors sit, discuss, decide, and then come to a conclusion saying that, okay, fine, this person was actually showing or demonstrating behavior at a rating scale of 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe. Okay. So definitely in an assessment center, the summary report does not showcase the average. Okay, guys, does that clarify, or you still have some benefit of doubt?
So, ma'am, what you're trying to say is that people observe, the observers observe all the dimensions. They put individual scores for every activity like group solving, in-tray, analytical. However, the final score is not an average. It is a result of a discussion of all the observers.
They have to come to a consensus saying that, because if you have some kind of a conflict between one assessor and the other assessor saying that the difference of rating, then they have to step back and show what kind of a data did you collect, what is that observed behavior. And this person also, if you are saying 4 on a rating scale of 5, then what is that behavior you are trying to show? Okay, so it is just not on just numbers of 3 or 4, but they will go back, that is step back and see the data they have recorded. So it is based on the data which gets again what classified, analyzed, and then they come to a conclusion. But it is not average. Did you get me? Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So unlike any other, here in an assessment center, all the assessors have to agree in saying that yes. So okay, fine. Sometimes assessors can slip something. So they again come back every day basis. They will again discuss whatever data has been recorded. And obviously all the data, they have to write exactly like a video saying that, this person said this person, then the body language was like this. So everything has to be recorded verbatim. They cannot add or delete anything in that when they are writing, documenting whatever they are observing, because that gets classified and coded, right?